Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by looking at page number 8 of the Delhi edition. On this page, The Hindu carries a series of infographics that highlights the massive pendency of cases in Indian judiciary. So by using the data provided by The Hindu, let's understand the topic of judicial backlog in complete detail, as it can be a very important topic for our mains exam. I'm sure many of you would be familiar with the popular saying, justice delayed is justice denied. This has unfortunately become a reality in the Indian judicial system, as crores and crores of cases have piled up, with several lakh cases pending from the last 5 to 30 years. So such prolonged delay in delivering justice denies justice itself and defeats the very purpose of having a judicial system in place, and also hits at the very foundation of our democracy. Just to put things in perspective, there are more than 4 crore cases pending in India across the higher judiciary and as well as at the lower judiciary. This huge pendency of cases is reported across states and is seen as a direct result of inefficiencies in the judicial system, and the problem is further aggravated by the large number of judicial vacancies that remain unfilled. And such a huge backlog of cases not only slows down the wheel of justice and denies justice, but also significantly increases the percentage of under trials in prisons, thus leading to overcrowding of Indian prisons, along with violating the rights of the under trials. It's in this context that Chief Justice N.V. Ramanna recently made an important remark. He highlighted the problem of pendency of cases and the vacancies that remain unfilled during a recent joint conference that involved chief ministers and high court chief justices of various states. He brought up the issue of chronic shortage in judges and highlighted the urgent need to increase the judge to population ratio in order to reduce the burden on the judiciary and to ensure faster disposal of cases. The Chief Justice of India remarked that unless the foundation is strong, the structure cannot be sustained, and called for an immediate and urgent resolution of the issue, especially to tackle unfilled vacancies in the Indian judiciary. The Hindu points out that the Indian judicial system is under tremendous pressure due to the piling number of cases, and as of May 2022, there are more than 4.7 crore cases that are pending across various levels, including the Supreme Court, high courts, and especially the lower courts. Majority of the pending cases are at the level of the lower judiciary, and 87.4% of these pending cases are reported at the level of subordinate courts. High courts report a pendency of 12.4% of the cases, with the rest being stuck at the Supreme Court. But the shocking fact is that around 182,000 cases have been pending for more than 30 years. The litigants in these cases are still awaiting justice, and unfortunately many accused still remain as under trials, thus leading to the violation of their basic fundamental rights. The infographic here depicts the share of pending cases for more than 5 years, especially at the lower courts, and about 1.08 crore cases, that's around 25% of the total pendency, have been pending for more than 5 years. Such cases, which have been pending for more than 5 years, are largely concentrated in the states of West Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, and UP. If you analyze the data shared by the National Judicial Data Grid, which is a judicial database set up by the Department of Justice, it shows that there has been an increase of more than 27% in pendency of cases between December 2019 and April 2022. This directly reflects the impact of the pandemic and the lockdown restrictions in pushing up the pendency of cases in our judiciary. The table here shows a consistent increase in pendency of cases at all the levels, including the Supreme Court, high courts, and the lower courts. The tree map over here shows that Uttar Pradesh has the highest pendency of cases, thus highlighting the problems that are plaguing the Allahabad High Court and the lower courts in UP. Out of these cases, around 14% of them have been pending for more than 10 years, and clearly highlights the inadequacy of the judicial system. Similar trends are reported in Bihar, West Bengal, Odisha, and as well as in few other states, including Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Rajasthan. Then, if you look at the ratio of pending cases per 1 lakh population, the national average stands at a staggering 3,068, with a very high ratio being reported across several states. The number of pending cases per 1 lakh population is extremely high across Kerala, Maharashtra, UP, Delhi, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, etc. Data from the National Judicial Data Grid makes it clear that the disruptions caused by the pandemic has further clogged the judicial system, thus leading to a significant increase in pendency of cases between 2019 to 2022. Even though courts went virtual, and even though it helped in clearing of many cases, the pendency has increased during the period. And according to PRS Legislative Research, a popular legal think tank, pendency has gone up by 20% at high courts and 13% at lower courts during the pandemic period. This has further compounded the problems faced by the judiciary and adds to the pendency that was already created by the inefficiencies of the judicial system. Such a large backlog of cases obviously leads to delays in justice and increases the length of trials. And the plot graph over here clearly shows that as the number of pending cases per 1 lakh population increases, you will notice a matching or commensurate increase in the percentage of cases that have been pending for more than 5 years. For example, look at states like UP and Odisha. As they report a higher pendency of cases per 1 lakh population, you will notice a matching or commensurate increase in the number of cases that have been pending for more than 5 years. Then, if you look at states like Kerala, Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, and even Delhi, even though the number of cases per capita is high for these states and union territories, the percentage of their pending cases is relatively lower thanks to the speedy disposal of cases at these courts. The primary reason for this high backlog of cases is clearly the shortage of judges at various courts and the large number of judicial vacancies that remain unfilled. The delays caused by the pandemic has further aggravated the problem and added to the burden being faced by the judiciary. If you look at the data, you will realize that even though India's population exploded over the decades, the sanctioned strength of judicial officers at high courts and lower courts only saw a gradual increase. So the approved strength of judges was never increased in line with the population increase. And upon this, the sanctioned strength was not filled on time, leading to pending vacancies, which ended up increasing the burden on the existing judges. According to PRS Legislative Research, vacancies have gone up from 18% to 21% over the last 1 decade. And at the Supreme Court itself, we had 5 vacancies as of last year, while around 38% of the positions at high courts were vacant. This problem is much more severe at the level of lower courts, that is, at the level of district courts and subordinate courts. For example, in UP alone, there were around 1,000 judicial vacancies at lower courts compared to the share of vacancies, and this was a 30% shortage as compared to the sanctioned strength. This brings us to an important metric, that is the judge to population ratio. According to data made available by the Department of Justice, for every 1 judge at the subordinate court level, the population varies anywhere between 60,000 to more than 1 lakh in most of the states. This happens to be a very poor judge to population ratio as compared to other countries. And as a result, we have only around 25,000 odd judges to hear or decide upon more than 4.7 crore pending cases. As I mentioned earlier, at the level of high courts itself, we have a 38% unfilled vacancy, and basically 717 high court judges are left to clear 5.9 million cases, thus placing the burden of 8,200 cases on every judge. So this huge backlog of cases has increased the number of under trials in Indian prisons. And according to prison statistics provided by the National Crime Records Bureau, under trials alone account for 76% of the inmates in our jails. If cases were to be disposed at a faster rate, the percentage of under trials in our prisons could have been drastically brought down, thus helping prevent the overcrowding of prisons and also to protect the basic rights of the accused. According to NCRB data, the number of inmates who are undergoing trial has jumped significantly in the last 2 3 years, thus leading to overcrowding of Indian prisons. The table here clearly shows the number of convicts in jails as compared to the number of under trial prisoners, and the share of under trial prisoners in our jails has jumped from 65% in 2010 to 76% as of 2020. This has increased prison occupancy rates across states, with several states even breaching their capacity, such as UP, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Maharashtra, etc. So, this gives us a deep insight into the issues created by the pendency of cases at the judiciary, and the only remedy is to instill wide sweeping judicial reforms at all the levels of the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, High Courts, and the lower courts. On a priority basis, the pending vacancies will have to be filled, not just to ensure faster disposal of cases, but also to ensure quality justice delivery. This should be accompanied with the provision of right infrastructure and technology through which the judiciary can fast track the hearing of cases in order to reduce the burden of pending cases in a time bound manner. Now, let's take a look at an editorial from page number 6 that helps us understand the conflict between the provisions of the IT Act and IT rules and the fundamental right to free speech and expression. As you know, right to free speech and expression is a guaranteed fundamental right under Article 19 of the Constitution. But of course, it's not an absolute right, and it comes with a set of reasonable restrictions. And your right to free speech and expression can be curbed by the state if it is seen as a threat to the country's integrity or sovereignty, or if it is inciting violence or leading to disruption in public order, or if it is seen to be affecting security of the state and friendly relations of the state with foreign countries. The online domain has emerged as one platform where every individual has got enough space to express their thoughts and opinions. But to regulate speech and expression in the online domain, the Government of India introduced the IT Act, which was enacted by the Parliament in 2000. Recently, a new set of IT rules have been notified by the government in 2021 to regulate social media, digital media, and OTT platforms. Through this Act and through these rules under the Act, the government seeks to regulate right to free speech and expression. But however, the IT Act has often been very controversial, especially provisions such as Section 66A of the IT Act. This provision allowed the government to tackle any offensive messages sent on the online platforms and even to punish the accused by treating it as a criminal offense. But this provision was notoriously misused by the police and the state institutions and led to several innocent people being arrested for merely expressing dissent and opposition against the government, or even for posting jokes and cartoons about political leaders. Because Section 66A provided for a very vague provision, and the very definition of offensive messages was very broad. This gave a lot of discretion to the authorities, and almost anything against the government and the leaders would be interpreted as offensive, thus leading to targeting of activists and citizens. So eventually, the constitutionality of Section 66A was challenged in the landmark Shreya Singhal case, and in 2015, the Supreme Court declared this provision as unconstitutional and struck down Section 66A from the law books. In the same case, the Supreme Court also upheld the constitutionality of another provision, that is Section 69A of the IT Act, which empowers the government to restrict online content on the grounds of threat to state security and to the sovereignty and integrity of the state, and also to friendly relations of India with foreign countries. The constitutionality of this provision was upheld by the Supreme Court based on the condition that the author of these messages, and as well as the intermediary platforms like social media platforms which might be hosting the messages of these authors, they both should be provided an opportunity to present their case before their messages are taken down, thus providing an opportunity for their hearing. And it was only on this condition that the Supreme Court had upheld the constitutionality of Section 69A. But today, the same provision has been repeatedly used by the government to order social media firms like Twitter to take down several messages, and they've even been ordered to block several accounts without even providing the intermediary or the author of the messages to present their case in front of the government before it moves to restrict the content. In the last 1 year itself, that's between February 2021 to 2022, Twitter alone has received around 1,474 directions to block several user accounts, along with removing 175 tweets, along with blocking several URLs that have been pointed out by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. An analysis of these messages, accounts, and URLs clearly shows that most of them carry messages which are seen to be criticizing the government or opposing the government. And this cannot fall under the definition of threat to state security or to the country's integrity and sovereignty or to friendly relations with other states. Because expressing such criticism, opposition, and dissent against the government is a basic democratic right that is guaranteed and protected under Article 19. So, rightfully, Twitter has opposed these government guidelines and orders and has approached the Karnataka High Court for relief. And hence, the editorial hopes that this could lead to a legal debate in the judiciary, which might bring about a finer balance between the IT Act and the new IT rules to help balance and moderate those provisions with fundamental rights guaranteed under Article 19, including the fundamental right to free speech and expression. Now let's look at this article from page number 10, which refers to a collaboration between India and Brazil in the defense domain. See, since a few decades, India and Brazil have been collaborating closely on several key global issues, including the Climate Change Convention, on the subject of UN reforms, and also at multilateral platforms such as the BRICS. The two countries have a history of working together in the field of socio-economic development, where they have learned from each other regarding their welfare schemes and programs, and they've even teamed up with an informal grouping called the G4 to push the UN towards reforming the key institutions of the UN. They've aligned their positions at Climate Change Convention and have also played a key role in reforming the global financial architecture through the BRICS grouping. Apart from this, India and Brazil, they did start their defense collaboration by holding a maritime exercise called IPSA under the trilateral grouping IPSA, which included India, Brazil, and South Africa. So through the IPSA platform, India, Brazil, and South Africa were focusing on defense relations, especially on maritime security across the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic. But following divergences between these countries, the IPSA exercise had been put on hold, and now India and Brazil are likely to come together again in the defense domain to collaborate in the field of submarine technology. The navies of both India and Brazil, they have recently procured the French Scorpion, which happens to be an advanced diesel electric submarine, and considering that both are operating the common platforms, the two countries are looking to collaborate with regard to servicing and maintenance of the French Scorpion submarines. India has already commissioned the Scorpion submarines into the Indian Navy under the Calvary class, and the same class of submarines are operated by the Brazilian Navy as well, thus creating a common ground for defense collaboration between India and Brazil. There is also a proposal for India and Brazil to work together in the field of nuclear submarine technology, as India has already been able to indigenously build nuclear-powered submarines and has even commissioned the Arihant class. So Brazil is also setting out to develop indigenous nuclear-powered submarines, and India and Brazil are likely to collaborate on this critical technology as well. Now let's take a look at a couple of mains practice questions. The first question: justice delayed is justice denied. This maxim has become an unfortunate reality in India due to massive pendency of cases at all levels of the judiciary. Critically examine. The second question: evaluate the conflict between the new IT rules and the right to free speech with relevant examples. Kindly write an answer to these questions and post your answers in the answer writing portal, for which the link has been given in the description box below. So this concludes our discussion for today. Thanks for watching.